Fill patterns, also sometimes called hatch patterns or poché patterns, are material designations that you'll find inside of a typical drafting environment. In Revit, they are called fill patterns, and to be able to modify your fill pattern, you can either do it on a project level or on a template level. What this means is if you do it in a template, that pattern will show up again and again and again in all your future projects, not your existing projects, but all your new projects from there on out. To do a new material designation inside of a specific project, you can go in and adjust these settings inside of your current project, and it'll only affect that project. Now, to add or change current material designation, you can come in here to the Manage tab, and then underneath Additional Settings, there's an option here for Fill Patterns. When you do this, the Fill Patterns dialog box will show up, and there'll be two different options that you'll have available to you. Either a drafting pattern, which is the way that this material looks if you take a section through the material, or a model pattern, and that's the way the material would look if it was inside of an elevation view. Examples of this would be brick. In an elevation view, you'd see the individual brick coursing. In a drafting view, though, which is that section view, you have your masonry brick and their lines are going to be going at an angle. So depending on what kind of view it is that you're trying to generate, that's going to be the kind of pattern that you'll be using, either a drafting or a model pattern. To create these from scratch, you can come up here to the New button, give it a name, and then there's an option here that says Simple Line Angle. If you change this line angle to be a different measurement, such as 90, and you can view this on the preview up here, you'll see the preview change, 0. In this case, I'm just going to make it back to a 45 again. You can control the spacing of it here where it has the line spacing. Type in the correct designation, and then here you'll have the spacing in between them. You can also do a crosshatch. That's where this line spacing 2 comes in. You can specify the distance between these lines that are now crossing the other lines. And this is where you can give a name to it. Really, these are the only tools that you can use inside of Revit, but you can also use an AutoCAD hatch pattern or a PAT pattern. That works really well specifically for your drafting patterns. Technically, it works for model patterns as well, but it works really well for your drafting patterns. To do that, you can come in here to Custom, with drafting selected here, move down here, and it'll have Custom Import. If you select on Import, you'll find in the data sets provided with this exercise that I've included an acad.pat file. I'm going to click on Open, and here we have all the different patterns inside of that file. And I'm going to scroll down here. We can see that this is all the ones that are in there. And I think I'm going to pick Escher. We can see here's the Escher pattern. And right here, this is import scale. If you tell it a different number, that will control the scale of which this will ultimately get inserted into your Revit project. In this case, I'll come down here and I'm going to type in 0.5. And we can see how it's a much smaller pattern, a much more condensed pattern now. And I'll click on OK to that. And now you can see that we have a new Escher pattern loaded into our Revit project environment. One other thing I want to point out, and this won't work too well with the Escher, so I'm just going to highlight on the Earth pattern right here. If you click on the Edit button, here you'll see that you have Custom, and it's saying, do you want to load in a different custom pattern? And you could pick a different one off of the list, and then at that point, you could even tell it maybe a different scale. Also, I'm going to hit on Cancel to that. This is going to be a more standard pattern, this masonry brick. If I click on Edit to that, you can see I can change the actual spacing between each of these lines as well as whatever the angle would be. So to create your own fill patterns inside of the program, New, and then specify the properties that you want to have for it, or click on Edit and then modify an existing pattern, and this button could be found underneath Manage, Additional Settings, and Fill Patterns.